What's up, everyone? Bales here with another one of our NBA DFS DraftKings Picks videos, this time for Tuesday, October 26th. A lot to quick go over here in the intro. First and foremost, there is a brutal thunderstorm going on here, so if you see flashes or hear thunder, I apologize. There is literally nothing that I can do about it, but it's been pretty crazy prior to getting on this podcast. Second, you can see that we have a new display here. As always, subscribe to everything. You can go to dfskarma.com /pricing. We have our jock market thing. You can now see my Twitter handle. If you're not following me on Twitter, I have no clue what you're doing. I've been doing very well on NBA props that get posted for free to my Twitter on top of the Bet Karma Discord, which again, just go to chatdfs.com. All of that, though, is also in the description. I do want to start this video out with something a little different. Let's start with a game, I guess. A fun little game of, in the comments below, let me know how many real life points you think that Julius Randle drops on the Philadelphia 76ers, just so you don't have to look everything up. And if you're just going off your gut for context, he scored 35, 21, and 30 in his first 3 games. Let me know in the comments how many points you think Julius Randle will score against the 76ers tonight. Also, as always, if you enjoy the podcast, go ahead and please give me a thumbs up. Comment any questions you have on top of your answers to the Julius Randle question. I will answer them throughout the day. Subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on so you don't miss any of our videos. And I believe we can pretty much get down to it. Thunder should be happening very soon. There was just a huge flash of lightning. I just wanted to let you guys know. When it starts, I will pause and then I'll finish once it's done. But starting with injury news, for the Philadelphia 76ers, once again, no Ben Simmons, no Shake Milton, and then Andre Drummond and Joel Embiid are questionable. Embiid's been questionable for the last 2 games, so I would assume in this game that he's going to suit up, but you'd never really know. They could just give him that day of rest. Nerlens Noel, questionable. It seems as if he's getting close to making his return and his New York debut for the season, so we could be looking at Nerlens Noel returning tonight, but as of now, questionable. For the Golden State Warriors, it looks like Andre Iguodala is going to play, which obviously will hurt Otto Porter. Jonathan Kuminga out once again. For Oklahoma City, Derek Favors is out. LeBron James, I believe he hurt his ankle the other night, but nothing too serious. He's probable to play. Wayne Ellington is out for the Spurs. Devontae Kakak. I don't even know how to say his last name. He is out. Wayne Ellington, obviously, for the Lakers. I just realized how I said that. It makes it sound like he's playing for the Spurs. He's not. He's playing for the Lakers. And then you have Vlatko Kankar out for Denver. And then Rudy Gay is going to continue to miss time for Utah. Another thing of lightning just flashed, and we haven't heard the first thunder, so looking like maybe I'm an idiot and have no clue what I'm talking about when it comes to weather. It's true, but, it kind of is what it is. Now that we're out of the injury news, we can get to the position-by-position breakdown. Not a bad slate, not a great slate. We had 9 games, I believe, on Monday. We're down to 5 games. Plenty to go over. DraftKings finally has tightened their pricing up. You're not getting guys like Chris Derate for $3,900, just ridiculous stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, there are some misprices, just guys that are too cheap and everything like that, but there's nothing, I believe, that sticks out absolutely crazy like that, especially on this slate. There's actually positions where I probably won't even be considering any cheap guys because everyone's at least priced appropriately. So starting at point guard, we have a lot to go on at the top. You have Stephen Curry, who has made his way up to 11,000. He's coming off just 3 tremendous games. There's not much else that you can say about him. He destroyed the Lakers with a triple-double where he struggled from the field. He shot out of this world with 45 points against the Lakers in his next game. And then he struggled from the field, but not anything crazy against the Kings, and nearly triple-doubled again. 58 fantasy points or more in all 3 of them. It feels like at the moment he's just the top option. Luka Doncic has struggled a bit. He gets a great matchup against the Houston Rockets, who just are not a defensive team. I have no issues with him as well. Of the two, just because they're only $100 apart, I prefer Stephen Curry probably at the moment, only slightly. So nothing crazy. I'm not going to really try to talk you off of Luka if you want to use him, but I do think that Stephen Curry is the better option. When you drop down a little bit more, Russell Westbrook finally has kind of sat into his groove. He's not really the scoring focal point of the team. 15 shot attempts in each of his last two games, which isn't, the 20 plus, 25 plus that we're used to from Russell Westbrook, but he still has the triple-double potential. 7 and 11 rebounds in his last two, 13 and 9 assists. So, it's definitely there. He gets a solid matchup against San Antonio. I have no problems with him whatsoever. I probably skip a little bit past that tier, though, drop down to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I like him on the opposite side of Curry. I'm just not really worried about the defense or anything. And then as you continue down, DeJounte Murray and Derek White, both great options. Both have been playing well. They're locked into big minutes for the Spurs. And I'm not overly scared about the Lakers, who have been pushing the pace this season to give more opportunities to their opponents. So I do think that both of them are in play. I feel like we kind of at least need to discuss Jalen Green, who hit 8 threes in his last game. A little expensive. I do like the matchup against Dallas. I think it's going to be a relatively high-scoring game. But at 6'1", Jalen Green probably isn't really the guy that I'm looking to use. He's going to need to shoot lights out again. I don't know how much that continues. So I probably don't use someone like Jalen Green, but I did want to at least talk because 8 threes in a game, I think it broke a rookie franchise record. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that that's the case. And, he's really making a push for Rookie of the Year. I think he's probably in a two-man race with Cade Cunningham, who has yet to play. So I think that Jalen Green's just in a really, really good spot for that. The guy, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's relatively loud here, so I don't want to try to talk through it or anything. That was the thunder. I don't know if you can see the flashes of lightning, but it just looks spectacular through the windows. The guy, anyway, at this price that really sticks out as mispriced is Jordan Poole. He posted 30 fantasy points in 25 minutes in his first game. He then played 25 minutes again, and he only scored 19. But he shot 4 of 14, 1 of 6 from 3 in that game. That's when Curry went off against the Clippers. And then almost 40 fantasy points again against Sacramento in 32 minutes. So it's very clear that Jordan Poole has a massive role in the Golden State offense. He is an extremely talented scorer. That's basically what he's going to continue to be used for. And at 5,900, he's just seeing too much volume, especially in a matchup against Oklahoma City, where I would assume that Lou Dort probably guards Curry. Not that I think Dort's going to shut him down or anything, but at least that's going to open up Jordan Poole for a significantly easier matchup because Dort does have the capability to shut down basically anyone. Continuing with guys that are just a bit too cheap, RJ Barrett hasn't looked overly dominant. He scored 34 fantasy points in his first game, but again, 47 minutes. I don't necessarily know why I said again because I didn't mention that before on this pod. I probably am just referring to a different pod that I've done, but 47 minutes in that game because it went to, I believe, double overtime. Since then, 23 and 26 fantasy points. It's only a matter of time before he pops off, and at 5,600, he's a guy that I will take a stab at. As you get a bit lower, there's not too many guys that I absolutely feel like I need to play. If you want the cheap guys, Jalen Brunson at 4,200, he's getting minutes in the mid-20s. He could drop 20 to 25 fantasy points. I think that's relatively fine. Damian Lee, another decent option for Golden State. He's playing solid minutes and does come with some scoring upside. The issue is he's so reliant on scoring that you kind of need his shot to be falling or else there's almost no way that he hits value. Moving to shooting guard, you have Donovan Mitchell at the top. I'm never not going to tell you to play him, but I would prefer to drop down a little bit. Again, Derek White is a very solid option. He's shooting guard eligible. There's not necessarily too many shooting guards that really stick out. I feel like Jordan Poole might be my favorite option. Seth Curry's also been playing very well. I don't have any issues with him. It's just, again, he needs to shoot a very high percentage to continue doing what he's doing. He's been doing it all year. I think on the season he's shooting almost 70% from the field. He's also shooting almost 80% from deep, I believe. He just doesn't really do anything else. 3 rebounds and less than 2 assists per game. So it's almost all scoring. It's never bad to take a shooter during a hot streak, though. And very clearly, when you're shooting almost 80% from 3, you're in the middle of a hot streak. So I do think that Seth Curry is very reasonable. The guy that's a bit too cheap, Will Barton. He's handling the ball quite a bit for Denver. I don't necessarily love the matchup against Utah, but under 6,000, I feel like he's a guy that I'm willing to at least take the shot on. Keeping it going. Oddly enough, Jordan Clarkson isn't playing overly heavy minutes for Utah, but even so, he knows his role. He took 19 shots in 24 minutes in his last game, scored almost 30 fantasy points, and he's only 5,600, so I don't have any problems with using someone like that. There are better salary relief options, I believe, at shooting guard than there are at point guard. The one that kind of sticks out is Lonnie Walker. He's looked really good in limited minutes for the Spurs. He's very clearly in the role of scorer off the bench. 25 minutes in 2 of his 3 games. He scored 25 and 35 fantasy points in those games. As I mentioned before, the Lakers don't have a defense I'm scared of, and they're playing at a significantly faster pace. So Lonnie Walker at 4,200 is probably one of my top values on the entire slate. And then, assuming he plays, which we believe he will, at 3,500 to get the minutes and just get the solid production that's been happening, Andre Iguodala isn't a bad option. I don't necessarily love him either, but he's at least reasonable. And then, if you want more scoring potential in more or less limited minutes for the San Antonio Spurs, Devin Vassell obviously can score points in a hurry. He did in the opener, 19 points in 25 minutes, 35 fantasy points in that. He's 3,300, so a lot of risk with him, but pretty much just unmatched upside because there's not many guys that are playing or that cost 3,300 that you're going to get 35 plus fantasy point upside from. Moving to small forward. If you're paying to the top, you're paying for LeBron James. That's very obvious. He's played 37 plus in each of his 3 minutes. I know that he got hurt in his last game, but he finished the game out and now he's listed as probable. So not a ton to worry about there. Michael Porter Jr. is a high upside option. His role in the offense is surprisingly small, I'll say. I thought it was going to be much bigger. Especially with Jamal Murray out. 10 shot attempts in his first 2 games. He's currently playing now as I'm recording this, so I don't have anything from his 3rd game to go off of. But I do think at 6,200, he's at least reasonable. Along with Evan Fournier, he's more or less a boomer bust option as well. I don't trust him whatsoever because he's so reliant on scoring. But he does come with more than enough upside to at least consider in tournaments. Josh Giddey has performed well when given the minutes. He's coming off of a near triple-double, 47 fantasy points. It doesn't necessarily make sense why Oklahoma City wouldn't keep locking him into 30-plus minutes. It was kind of weird that he only played 20 against Houston. I know it was a blowout, but that seems like the kind of game that you want to get young players like Josh Giddey minutes. But regardless, he dropped 19, 8, and 7 with 4 steals in a significantly tougher matchup against the Philadelphia 76ers. So I don't have any problems with him against Golden State tonight. The big issue, obviously, is that his price tag is almost $6,000. So adds quite a bit of risk to a guy that, he's going to have a lot of growing pains in the NBA early in his career. I do think he's viable tonight, though, and I don't really have too many issues using him on this type of a 5-game slate. As you drop down more, we have basically some of the same guys that we already talked about. Lonnie Walker. There's not too much that I would say I love. PJ Dozier is playing around 20 minutes a game, and he's a guy that has the ability to score a little over a fantasy point per minute. So if you want to use someone like that, you can, but there's so much risk involved. Obi Toppin flashed in the first 2 games, then he only played 12 minutes in the third game. It's tough to know what New York's going to do with his minutes. It seems like when he gets in there and he's scoring decently well, they're going to give him some time. If he's not, they're going to pull him. So, again, just a boom or bust option under 4,000. I feel like it's fine to take the shot in tournaments, but that's about it. And then if you want the minutes without basically the production, Kent Baismore has played 31, 23, 28 minutes. He's done virtually nothing with them. 13, 9, and 15 fantasy points. He's 4,200, and this is a limited slate, so I think you can at least consider him. You're not going to play him over someone like Lonnie Walker, so if you're not playing Walker, you just plug him in for the price tag, but if you're playing Walker and you also need someone cheap, at least Kent Baismore is going to see the court. At power forward, it's really tough to move away from Julius Randle. 62.5 fantasy points, 48.5, and then 68. He's playing at an elite level. He has the ability to contribute at least at a relatively high level in all 3 categories. There is triple-double potential there. He had 4 combined blocks and steals in his last game. I think the most amazing part about what happened in his last game, to me anyway, is that Julius Randle shot 33%, 8 of 24 from the field, 20% from the 3, 2 of 10. He scored 68 fantasy points, and he didn't shoot even close to even like a decent game. 44.4% and 56.3% in his first 2 games, and then all the way down to 33, and he still scored 68 fantasy points. What he's doing is incredible. I don't love the matchup against Philly, but I'm also not overly concerned with it. So I think if you can get 9,500 to Julius Randle, he's a really good play. Anthony Davis seems to be kind of finding his own for the Lakers. In the first game, he had 26 shot attempts. I feel like the big 3 for them is going to kind of rotate in and out, but it doesn't look like Westbrook is taking a ridiculous amount of shots. So I do think that Anthony Davis can kind of continue the success he's found. And for 9,200, he's another option that makes a lot of sense, but specifically in tournaments tonight, especially against San Antonio. As you just drop down more, Tobias Harris, completely fine. Draymond Green should get some center minutes. And obviously, Oklahoma City has not been good against the center this season. The problem is Green's 7,100, and I don't necessarily know if I'm willing to pay that for a guy that we know isn't really going to shoot all that much. He had 12 shot attempts against the Kings, but before that, 5 and 5. He's more of the facilitator. He can grab some rebounds, but he does have triple-double upside, and that's kind of what we would be chasing at his current price tag if you were to use him. Keldon Johnson, I feel like he's taking on a larger role in the San Antonio offense. Gets the matchup against the Lakers that we've already talked about 10 times already in this pod. And I feel like his price is more or less sitting where it is because of his game against Orlando. So when they played Orlando, he scored 20 fantasy points. It just wasn't a great game. Since then, 40.5 and 28 in 37 and 29 minutes. He took 18 shot attempts in both of those games. Very clear that his role is growing for San Antonio, and he's going to be a focal point of their rotation and offense this season. So at 5,200, he seems like one of the easier plug and plays for me tonight. That's probably a spot that I do end up going. At 5K, Darius Bazley is too cheap. 30 minutes in 2 of his 3 games in a blowout against Houston. He only played 18, so I don't care about that game. And he hasn't flashed too much upside at this point, which has kept his price really low. I do think that he's a very reasonable option. I prefer Keldon Johnson to Bazley, but I do think that both of them make sense. And then if you're dropping down, there's just not all that much to like. I'm not in love with really any of the guys basically under 5,000 at this point. I think Robinson Earl is interesting if he's going to get minutes, but I don't even slightly trust that they're going to give them to him, so that's kind of something that I'm not overly interested in. We talked about Obi Toppin, so if you really want to head with someone like that, I think that's fine. The only other guy that's cheap at 4,500, once again, boom or bust, Doug McDermott. He's played 30-plus minutes in each of his last 2. He's so reliant on scoring, though. And in those 2 games, he scored 10 fantasy points and 36.5. I think you guys can guess which game his shot was falling and which game it wasn't. So he is a cheap source of upside, I guess. Moving to center, you have so many options that are really good plays. You have Jokic, who's just the focal point of the offense, triple-double upside. He's seeing a ton of rebound opportunities. He's a great scorer, super efficient. I'll never say no to him. I don't love the matchup against Rudy Gobert, but at the same time, Gobert's not the type of center that's going to be able to stop everything that Jokic can do. So I think he's fine. If Joel Embiid is starting, Embiid gets a great matchup against New York, who struggled against centers. Mitchell Robinson isn't going to be able to slow him down either. Christian Wood against Dallas. Dallas has no one to stop him. Wood struggled against Boston in his last game, which was kind of tough. I felt like that was a good spot for him, but prior to that, 61 against Oklahoma City. So we know the upside's there. On the other end of the Denver game, Rudy Gobert has looked fantastic with 45 and 48.5 fantasy points in his first 2 games. 20-20 threat anytime he takes the court, has a ton of block upside that he hasn't displayed yet this season. So 8,200 is very reasonable for him. Jakob Poeltl continues to be underpriced. 56 is way too cheap. We've kind of seen that he's locked into bigger minutes, 30 plus in 2 of his 3, and he played 26 against Denver. 36 and 40 fantasy points in the 2 that he played 30 plus. At 5,600, I don't see how you can't just easily say that he probably hits value. The only problem would be if they would pull him for some reason, but I don't anticipate that happening. And at 5,600, he's just a relatively easy play. At 5,400, Mitchell Robinson, I don't even slightly trust, especially with fouls. He has 6 and 5 in his last 2. Joel Embiid is going to basically do anything that he wants. So if Robinson's fouling him, it'll be a quick day for him. But the obvious 40-plus DK point upside for 5,400, it's hard to pass that up in tournaments, but just makes a really solid option if you're willing to take the risk. I think that Poeltl for 200 more has relatively similar upside, probably not quite as much as Robinson, but he doesn't come with nearly as much risk. So, you're kind of grabbing the lesser ownership there on Robinson and taking on the heightened risk for a little bit higher of a ceiling for $200 less then as well. As you move down center, I think the only cheap options that I'd really consider, and I don't necessarily know if I want to go here because he's 4,300, but Alperen Sengun, I think, is going to be a very, very good player. He has yet to play even 20 minutes in a game, and he probably won't play it again tonight. With that said, he has 25-plus fantasy points in 2 of 3. Just a ton of upside. He does so much well on the court. He can contribute in each of the 5 categories. In 19 minutes against Boston, 7 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 block, and 3 steals. Big problem for him in that game, 5 personal fouls in less than 20 minutes. Regardless, it doesn't matter because it wasn't like at any point in time he was going to play 30-plus minutes anyway. So the fouls at this point don't mean that much. But I mean, it's still, a tough thing to deal with when he's fouling that much. That about does it for what we have for you today. Once again, if you enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. In the comments below, take your guess at how many points Julius Randle scores on this slate in this game. Real life points, not fantasy points. That would be crazy if someone put like 70 or something and then it ended up happening. But that's all I got for you guys today. I will be back once again tomorrow. I believe we have a significantly bigger Wednesday slate. But until then, good luck, and I hope that all of you guys have green screens tonight.